the Facilities Committee meeting. I know, is there any stragglers in the hall, Frank, that need to come in? Any? Looks like we got a good count.
No strike.
I think we have everyone. Okay, and I think we'll open up with a motion for the minutes, approve the minutes of the last meeting by Evelyn, second. Second by Rachel. Any discussion, changes, deletions? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. And Jeffrey, do you have a preference? You want airport first?
Yeah, we'd like to start with airport.
Okay, Ross, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First two items on your agenda are related, they're connected. Last month at the board meeting, the Board of Supervisors approved some specialized legal services to defend the county against a claim for additional compensation from Forest Enterprises. Those contracts were approved at the board meeting last month. This here is to move the money, increase the capital projects. Page 2 is the resolution request form. Increase H306 by $20,000, the amount that the committee capped the legal services at for that project. And on page 3 of your packet is a request to amend the budget. This is to move the $20,000 out of our airport reserve, put into the transfer account, and ultimately into the capital project.
Okay, a motion to move 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
And seconded, that's by Evelyn, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
I just give me a second here just to read through it again. So we're asking, I know we passed it at the board meeting last month. And so now you're just asking for the money to come out of capital reserve, is that it?
That's right. The airport has a reserve account, and I'd like to move the money, increase the capital project. It's accounting purposes. Treasurer's office asked that we do this, move the money into that account.
Okay, I was against it at the board meeting, so I'm obviously not going to support this now, but thank
Do you
you.
have any other questions? Or
No, for right now, no.
anyone else have any other questions? How about the new members? You need any clarity on it? Good. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So moved.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a miscellaneous resolution request on page 4 of your packet. This here is to transfer some funds from, for some expenses that were paid out of the airport operating budget. Those amounts and items were listed under E and F on the resolution request form. These are for IFE's independent fee estimates. These are required by the FAA prior to receiving a grant for some design and for engineering projects. In order to receive the grant, we have to do the IFEs first. So we paid for these IFEs out of our operating budget, and this resolution request is to transfer the funds to the expense to our capital project for that.
Okay, a motion to get it on the floor by John, seconded by Ron. Discussion. Correct.
What's an IFE?
That's an independent fee estimate. Our engineers provide us with a scope and services and fees for performing technical services for any one of our number of our capital projects. And the FAA requires us to go out and hire an independent engineering firm to provide an estimate of their own estimate of cost, to make sure that we're getting a fair price for those services.
Any other questions?
What were these IFEs for? What were they estimating?
H364, that is an independent fee estimate for the runway, I believe that's the runway 30 obstruction removal project. That's design services to design the tree removal project off the approach end of runway 30. And for H325, that is the same technical support services for the acquisition of the land off the approach end of runway 30.
So,
Ron?
we generally use C&E Engineering for a lot of the airport work.
Yes, CNS Engineers is the company that we contract with to perform the services, and Passer Associates is the engineering firm that did an independent fee estimate. And what we're doing is we're moving the money from our operating budget and expensing it to the capital project. That way I can submit those expenses for reimbursement under the grant with
So
the FAA.
Passero, all his function is to say, whatever CNS is charging you is okay?
Yeah, I submit to Passero the scope of services, what we agreed upon, what services would be provided under the contract. Passero looks at those services and gives their own estimate of what it should cost. I then take those costs and compare them to what CNS provided, and if they're within 10% plus or minus of what CNS's costs are, they're deemed to be reasonable.
And if they're not?
If they're not, then I have to either go back out and get another independent fee estimate, or I have to find out where the lapse is, and either someone missed something or on one end or the other, and we either have to sort that out or, again, get another firm to do an independent fee estimate.
So where do you find, Pizarro and Associates? I mean, how do you pick them?
The county has 3 engineering firms who are qualified to perform services at the airport. When we selected a term agreement for 5 years for engineering firms, we selected Passer Associates, McFarland Johnson, and CNS Engineers. So we have 3 firms we can choose from that are qualified to perform these services.
The whole airport expansion, though, has been under CNS, right?
They're the ones that are, have been doing the engineering services, the environmental services, the planning services for that project, correct? Some of the environmental services are being performed by McFarland Johnson as well.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Page 5 of your packet is a request for travel to attend the annual airport conference in Hershey, Pennsylvania. This is the same conference that we go to every year. It's the airport conference for the Eastern region.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor. Motion by Ron, seconded by John. Discussion?
I'm just curious why, are you taking your own vehicle, Ross?
No,
Okay. Well, it's not a county vehicle.
it's not. I don't believe that's checked. I handed my form.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Supposed to use the fleet vehicle down there at the bottom.
Good, okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Okay, under the referral and pending items, just to give you a brief update, I have prepared a spreadsheet of the airport revenues versus expenditures, and I've been working with Jeff. We're working on developing some recommendations, suggestions, perhaps, for the committee's consideration. Once we have something more finalized, fine-tuned, appropriate, we will bring that forward to committee.
And was this in conjunction with what Supervisor Conover asked for some months ago?
Yes.
And he received that documentation?
No, I think you're working on it, right?
Yeah, I haven't finalized any of the recommendations. I have prepared the spreadsheet, but it's just data at this point in time.
Was there anything else you want to add to that, Ron, or that you need to do?
No, I think I was mostly interested in the data on the expense centers and the revenue centers, so that we could begin to see how the business plan comes together. I don't know that I need a full business plan or specific recommendations from you. If you have some ideas, I'm certainly interested. I think the committee would be interested, but I was more interested in, what does it cost to run this whole place, and also, what are the revenue centers, some of which we contract, but
Right.
it would help us in the future make our decisions going forward.
Okay.
Okay.
The last item on the agenda, under referral pending items, this relates to the new restaurant out at the airport. Mr. Skimmerhorn did come out on September 1st and updated the committee as to the status. There was a question whether or not there would be a need to amend the lease agreement if he obtained a subtenant. Mr. Skimmerhorn has decided to hire his own employees to run the restaurant, so there will be no subtenant. He'll be operating it with his own employees. Therefore, no amendment to the lease agreement will be necessary. I'm looking to see if the committee agrees that we can remove this from the pending items.
Committee consensus, I would agree, yes.
So he's gonna run the restaurant himself, you're saying?
That's right.
His own employees? I thought he was leasing it out to, Aunt Sally or somebody?
Yeah, Sally Longo, she's actually an employee of Mr. Skimmerhorn.
Oh, okay. I thought she was a separate,
Yeah, that's why there was some uncertainty, and I have gotten confirmation from the FBO manager, I spoke with Steve Abbott, and his understanding also is that, Sally is an employee of Mr. Skimmerhorn, and that all the staff will be employees of Mr. Skimmerhorn. There will be no sublease agreement.
John?
Ross, is there a pending date for opening the restaurant?
Nothing official. I think, last I heard, they're shooting for the end of February, but it's a moving target. I know the utilities are all in for the restaurant, so the electric's in, the natural gas has been installed. They're heating the building today with the gas and using electricity, so that was a big hurdle, we got over, and...
And the sign's out there.
Yep, the sign is up. It's very, very nice sign. It's very attractive.
Yeah, very nice.
They're interviewing people all the time, so...
Just the update on the natural gas installation, where that's at quickly.
Yeah, it's moving along very nicely. We have many of the service lines in today. They're actually working on getting the service lines in over to the jet hangars. We have natural gas service and a meter installed for the restaurant. We have service lines without meters installed at the new maintenance hangar, at the terminal building, the ARF building, the electric generator building. There's 3 or 4 more services that need to be installed. They'll come back, put the meters in, and once the meters are set, we'll be able to start the conversion of the heating appliances over. I'm hoping that we can have everything in place and be able to tackle this first thing in the spring and start making those conversions.
Okay. Any other questions or anything for Ross? Rachel?
Perhaps it's more of an issue for you, Chairman Jarg, but one question that I have that recently come up with Ed Bartholomew and actually attending a Town of Queensbury's workshop meeting was the discussion about the advisory board that used to be in existence. And I know in the past I've voiced a concern about us dissolving that. In Supervisor Merlino's tourism committee, which I thought was very helpful, he brought in members from the business community to discuss, talking about going out and figuring out the best way with tourism and OCTAX. And I guess what I'm wondering is if there's a way at our next committee meeting we could discuss the possibility of reinstating that advisory committee. I know those meetings were incredibly helpful, both from a marketing perspective, but also now that we're starting to prepare for the FBO negotiations and it's not creeping up on us this time, we have plenty of time for that. If we could have another discussion about reigniting that board,
Okay. And that would be great. It would probably be advantageous to call and talk to Bill Mason.
Okay.
He originally proposed the idea. I believe it was a 3-2 vote in the committee when it was 5 members, and I was the tiebreaker. And I'm kind of proud of that because I think it served a very good function and brought a lot of entities together that needed to be. But it was designed in with respect to a time limit, so that there was accomplishments in some form of how they're proceeding and what they're going to get about, and then a dissolution. And I think it worked out very well. But if you could talk to him about his time in it, what he thought about it, I think it would be helpful moving forward with maybe what you're projecting and what you'd like to see out of it, and what maybe we could do. Okay, because I think the EDC would be helpful continuing on in some form or manner, even if, with those, most of those entities. Because I know John attended the meetings, and it's pretty informative when you get all the groups together. You get the FBO there, you get EDC there, you get the counties in the administration, and all the things that go along with it. Say again?
Pilots Association too.
Yes, the Pilot Association was great. So they all have different perspectives and agendas, and they get to discuss their opinions. So it was very good. Okay. Anything else to come before the airport and Ross? Okay, thank you, Ross. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We'll move into the Buildings and Grounds agenda. Everyone should have that on there. First item on the agenda was just an update from me on a request that came out of the board meeting last month to do a study to review the Siemens Energy contract for the municipal center. And I just wanted to update the committee on some recent discussions I've had with representatives from NYSERDA. So I talked with a rep from NYSERDA actually just yesterday. They got back to me, And initially, I thought there was a program called Flex Tech that would be an appropriate program that NYSERDA shares in some funding, and it allows, and it gives us, access to a pre-approved list of contractors. I included in the packet that list of contractors, and, that they refer to as Flex Tech consultants. After I spoke with the NYSERDA rep, however, though, she said that the Flex Tech program is really for, new projects or proposed projects, not for what she called a retro commissioning study, and that's really what it appears that we're looking at, because the work is already complete. We're doing a retro commissioning study to look back at the proposals and the project and the work that was complete to make sure that it is functioning as intended. What she told me was that they don't provide funding for those types of studies. They used to in the past, and they do not anymore. So I understand the board advanced a resolution authorizing up to $20,000 in expense. But she said that this list of consultants that they use for the FlexTech program, they've already gone through a vetting process with NYSERDA. They're the types of consultants that would understand the project and the assumptions made and the programs used. And so she said this would be an appropriate list to start with, to do any targeting requests for proposals. They're supposed to get back to me by the end of this week. I asked them for some sample RFPs from when they used to do the retro commissioning studies, and also, a sample RFP and scope of services, and any other information she could have from, or she could give me for a recent project where I can use that as a baseline to develop an RFP. Once I get that from them, I think I'll have a better idea of the type of typical scope involved. I certainly have some ideas myself, but I think tapping into NYSERDA's resources and their experience will help me develop an RFP. And I would anticipate, though, I'd want to get back to the committee with that to make sure that I'm positive that we're going to be asking for the right answers out of the study. And so that's the status, and I'll keep the committee informed as I go.
Okay. I want to stay on topic with here, but Travis has done some work, sent on the 10th of January to our chairman. He sent a notice, and he has some points he's covered in here. And I thought if he could come to the podium and explain what he thinks the scope is, et cetera, and if you could kind of take it, we talked a little bit before the meeting about what he's looking at, and then I have some derivatives off of that as far as what the committee needs to discuss or what we think. But why don't you go ahead, Travis, first?
Okay, thank you. In regards to that last statement about the NYSERDA, it could well be true that they no longer fund retro. I do know that Saratoga had them look at their cogen plant. That was 3 years ago, and maybe things have changed since then. But I do know that they paid 50% of that study. In any regard, before an engineer is going to be able to bid on this, certain things the engineer will need to know. So I took the liberty of putting together a proposed scope of work, and this is something you ought to consider. The first part is really not what I'm asking, but what we're giving. And I apologize, I don't have a copy for each of you here. But it says that the county will provide the following documents, so the engineer knows what he'll be getting. All materials filed with NYSERDA, including the measurement and verification report, any energy bills desired for the period in question. The baseline was 2005, 2006, and anywhere after completion, 2009 to 2015, that would be available to the engineering firm, and also access to DPW personnel. I also put in they could have access to this preliminary spreadsheet, which I had put together some time ago. I gave to Jeff about a month ago. And I think I would hope that Jeff would agree that it's a good thing just to see this, whether you or not you agree with it. It's a good for any engineer to see. It's a good way of expressing what it is. At least one other engineer is looking at. That could be made available, whether or not they want to use it or not is up to them. And then as far as the questions that you'll be asking him, to me, I have 7 questions here And you ought to think if there's any others that you think ought to be in the scope. But I have, what I would like to know is an estimate of the realized energy savings, kilowatt hours, kilowatts, and therms, based on historical metering records. It's basically what I did and presented to Jeff a month ago. An estimate of the realized dollar savings. Now this is in dollars. The first one was in kilowatts. Second question, an estimate of the realized dollar savings based on the actual energy savings above and actual energy rates for each year. So that would be turning, I just looked at energy and said that, okay, we're off by a factor of 2 on electricity, off by a factor of 6 on gas, and based on you know, actual rates, it would be that we're so many $1 million in the hole. You would have to look at the contract, which would be the third one. I have a third question I have is an estimate of the dollar savings based on the contract language. So you'd have to look at that. The engineer would have to look at that contract as well, where it says that no, you don't use the actual rate for electricity. You use a certain escalated rate that was defined in the contract. So that would be a third question. A review of the measurement and verification submittals and their veracity. Part of what the contract said and part of what's required for NYSERDA funding is that the actual gains be verified after installation, and there is a report that was delivered to NYSERDA on that. It was obtained by Peter McDevitt, and you know, that would be part of what we would give to these people. So his comments on that. Fifth, an analysis of the geothermal aspects of the project and an explanation for why it was never used in the winter. We have the contract fully explaining that yeah, we'd be saving a lot of natural gas and such because this would be used in the winter, but we also have statements that it never has been used in the winter. So there's that question to ask. Question number 6, the reasonableness of the initial assumptions and savings, including non-energy savings, such as reduced maintenance, avoided costs, etc. Again, those are probably things he'd end up getting from DPW. I have a list of, I asked those questions to DPW myself, and I have certain costs here that, you know, maintenance, we're saving so much, we didn't have to buy a cooling tower, we saved so much on that, etc. And then the 7th one is just future recommendations, if any. So I would suggest I can make this available, or the chairman can make this available to you. I would suggest that you take this as just a proposal. I would hope that you would all look at this, put in what other things you think you need to know, what questions you need to know to be able to talk intelligently about this project as far as whether we have saved money, haven't saved money, etc.
And as far as the committee is concerned, Travis handed this to me and wanted to get together with me before or at any time to discuss all this. And here's my points with all of it. There's an Attorney General's investigation going on. There's a Sheriff's investigation going on. And my recollection was that the DA said that this would be helpful to do a study like this. So my point is that we allocated funding to get a study done. Travis has handed me things that he would like to see done. He's been certainly critical of Siemens and has his points. And I certainly want his points recognized in any study we do so that there's no dissatisfaction from the person that's probably put the most time in at looking at all of this. So that point being, as we move forward, the engineers that we get look at what he wants, you know, what he has concerns with from an engineering profile. And having said that, when we get the document back, where does it go? Now, we aren't litigators, but does it go to the DA? Does it go to the AG? Does it go to the Sheriff's Department? And my assumption is yes, unless someone has something different going on. And there no doubt will be a presentation before us, et cetera, so that they can dumb it down so we can understand all the critical data. So when it goes to those other places that are doing the appropriate investigations from a legal aspect, and that's where kind of it's directed now. So there's another bodies that are looking at this appropriately, other than ours, and, you know, I know we're conducting this study, but my point is this where you want it to go? Is this where we deliver this document when we get it? Does it go to the DA, does it go to the AG, or does it go to the Sheriff's Department, or does it go to all three? And then where are we after that as a body? Because I think the fiduciary responsibilities as we move forward, and we've heard one already today, that NYSERDA possibly is not gonna share in half the cost, we'll be allocating fundies as we move forward. First, if we have engineering costs here, and certainly there possibly could be legal costs if we wanted to jump into this ourselves with Mr. Polterwitz as we move forward, all the junctures that he's been involved with this. So I need a dialogue from the committee that we didn't have at the full board, and Evelyn, if you wanna open it up, that would be fine.
I'll jump right in here. If we're getting a report back and it's a statistical tabulation of data, which I can't see how we would have that without having statistical tabulation of data, I would believe they'd be open to FOIL, so quite frankly, anybody could get it and read it. So certainly if we want to send it somewhere for someone to have on hand, we could do that, but quite frankly, any agency could come in and get a copy of it. I would imagine it would be subject to FOIL. I don't know of anything that would be in there that's classified or otherwise redacted, should there be a FOIL request.
And my point wasn't who could have it, it was who could have it that it would be pertinent to what the dialogue is. And that is that there was some monies missing from what was supposed to be appropriated in a savings venture with us and Siemens. So where do we go from there? Claudia?
As a litigator, I think that we would send it to our county attorney first and work with him on whether or not we have any potential litigation against Siemens there. I mean, I know that's something that we've talked about, but between this and the cogen.
Okay, now that you brought that up, when we're going to have this engineering firm do this work, should our county attorney be involved prior to, like, the RFP that we're sending out, what he's looking for? I mean, Travis as an engineer has concerns, and I'm sure a legal person would have their concerns. And we have that dichotomy where we had an investigation of 4 years on the cogen, and we wanted charges brought, but the legal end of it didn't want that, as far as the counsel with the AGs. So there was a difference of opinion on investigation and actually charges. So we could end up in what the legal needs from the engineering department, et cetera. Ron?
Well, the whole thrust of this thing is in simple form, did we save any money by putting the cogen in or putting in the geothermal? So once the engineering study is done, then our counsel and Paltrowitz will look at that and say, yes, you know, we didn't save any money. And, you know, we think that there are really good grounds for a lawsuit. And then with Kevin and the Attorney General's office, there's a tie-in there, and we can proceed that way. But I certainly think Paltrowitz and our counsel should be looking at the final result to see if, in fact, we did lose money or make money, if you will. But that's the whole reason why we're doing this, right?
Yes, but point being, Travis has his concerns of what he's looked at. Who are the other entities that you want to have concerns to add to it? Does Paltrowitz need to have things looked at while we're doing this study? Is there other people that need a dialogue with the engineers as we move forward? In other words, I want to be thorough and not waste money with an engineering study where we have other professionals tell us, well, you should have looked at this. So now is the time to discuss it, and now is the time to be specific. I would like Travis's issues here part of the record and looked at as we move forward. Is there anything else or anyone else that we should have look at? Claudia?
Given that Mr. Paltrowitz has been involved with this for a long time, I think it makes sense to have his input in the RFP preparation. I just want to also throw out there, though, if the report indicates that there is a basis for litigation, that we step back and take another look at who our counsel is going to be for the litigation aspect. But as far as negotiations with Siemens and looking at the reports in the past, Mr. Paltrowitz is already up to speed. He should probably take a look at what we need to put in the RFP.
Okay, Rachel?
I agree with Supervisor Bramer. I also think that given the fact that we have a, as you pointed out, a sheriff's investigation, the AG's investigation, the DA's involved, just to add to that, I think we should make that input, welcome the opportunity for those entities to also give input. I don't think there's any harm in saying to them, we've read it in the paper, we're going out for this. Is there anything specifically that you want us to address? I think you're right in thinking, let's get our biggest bang for our buck here and not do a wasteful study. Let's make sure it's all inclusive. So I say more, include everybody's concerns.
Jeff, you're the one that has to design this. Is that all fair to you? Do you understand kind of where we're going with it?
Yeah, and I agree. I think once I get a draft together for the scope of services, I'll get the input from NYSERDA. I'll certainly take a look at Travis's stuff. I think this is a good start as well. And then, develop that, and I can send out a draft and give a period of time for each of those agencies to chime in, and yeah, let's do one complete one. My only concern would be that but we can worry about it once we get the proposals, when we get the final fee, with everybody chiming in, and the 20,000 might not go far enough. But we'll worry about that when that occurs. I guess the only other thing I'll mention is, from the standpoint of just our final output, I would anticipate a written report with complete appendices with all the backup data and everything else that was used in the report, and then also a public briefing to the board. At a minimum, it would involve those two outputs from the consultant, unless anyone else has any other ideas that they want to include in.
Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are three worlds of products here. There's the engineering, which I think we can cover pretty well with your staff and with Mr. Whitehead's input. I think we've got that pretty well covered. Then there's the question of what that information means vis-a-vis the contract that we had, which is another matter, which is another type of analysis, right? In other words, somebody's going to need to know.
No, I think, sorry, I shouldn't interrupt.
No, I'm just saying that if we're hiring people that are engineers to do an engineering analysis, there's going to need to be a legal review of our existing contract relative to this, and what the information we gather means relative to that contract. For example, I mean, maybe we save a ton of money, but there's issues that represents issues relative to the contract, or that we didn't save any money, but there are no issues relative to the contract, right? I mean, so there's that type of analysis that has to take place relative to the contract, which I think is a type of legal analysis, because it involves contract. And then there's the whole world of criminality. Which I think we best leave to the people that are charged with criminal investigation, and other than provide them, obviously, the report with whatever assistance that provides them, or information that provides them in terms of what they do. Unless they have a specific request for us, it would seem to me that would be the best course. So it would seem to me that we should at least discuss, beyond the engineering, that there's going to need to be some review of that information relative to our existing contracts. And I assume that would be done by our county attorney in conjunction with the consultants that we retain. But if anybody feels that's insufficient, then we should discuss that. Now, maybe it would involve outside counsel in conjunction with our county attorney. Perhaps it may be handled by our county attorney or by the consultant alone. I mean, I don't know. But it seems to me that those are the three things we're dealing with here.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, to me, and I'm a lot more simplistic. The board almost unanimously decided, let's spend the money, let's get an independent NYSERDA engineering firm in here to tell us, one way or the other, where we are on the geothermal aspect of the contract. Supervisor Whitehead, if you run for office yet, 'cause you oughta, you're probably the most popular guy in the county. But anyway, Mr. Whitehead has thoroughly detailed questions for the RFP. He's gonna work, I believe, with Mr. Tennyson on formulating the final RFP. And then part 2 and 3 of Mr. Supervisor Conover, I believe we'll be getting to part 2 and 3. But right now, until we know where part 1, actually what it tells us, we can't go to part 2 and 3, okay? So let's get that out there. Let's agree on what firm, or let Mr. Tennyson agree on what firm to hire. My recommendation would probably be the firm that did the Saratoga, the NYSERDA firm, the engineering firm that helped out with the Saratoga challenge, because they did a remarkable job from what I understand, but I'm not an expert on that. And then if it leads us, once we get the data back and the information back, then we'll decide on parts 2 and 3.
Okay, but
That's
you-
simplistic to me.
But are you happy with the discussion as far as talking about all the parts and how we move forward? You're
Yeah,
good?
you mean including other agencies? Yes, I'm fine with that. I love your suggestion, let's make it thorough from the get-go. Let's not say, oh, I wish we had had these people, their input, or these people. I think the county attorney should have input. I think the DA maybe even should have some input on that, you know. But I don't wanna make this bigger than it is, but on the other hand, I wanna make it as thorough as possible,
Okay.
so.
Jeff?
Just one more thing regarding the scope of services. The majority of the things we're talking about are rearward looking at what was done already and analyzing that, and that's certainly critical to the legal aspects of it. One of my concerns with, looking at future recommendations, is some of that, if a future project or future changes may in fact be eligible for some funding under the Flex Tech program. That program did change last year, so I'm not surprised that Saratoga had a study done 3 years ago. It was last year that the program changed, where they won't fund the retro commissioning study. So we may want to break the scope into a retro commissioning study and then an analysis for future. We may in fact be eligible for NYSERDA funding, since the project was conceived, nearly a decade ago and completed, 8 or 9 years ago. We may in fact be eligible for a fresh look for a study of our existing systems and any changes or future recommendations. So I think we want to be careful on that future recommendations portion for this initial phase, because it could be a whole nother scope. I mean, you could look at a lot of different things for future recommendations. So if we're going to include any of that in the scope, I think we want to have it very limited to maybe the specific systems that were installed already by Siemens in that first project.
And you wanna go on to the next?
Say one more thing. I just wanted,
Quickly, Travis?
if I could, yes, I agree 100% with Mr. Conover, and I think that all of us might be jumping to lawyers right off the bat, but there is a second thing that he talked about. The contract definitely says that we are guaranteed that we will not lose money. So, the first step would be take it to them, but you can't do that until you have some engineering backing, saying, we think we think we lost money. Siemens will then say whatever they say, and that might end up in court, but Mr. Conover is absolutely right. And then as far as the money's concerned, we did the whole job, for $15,000, Internoc did, without, and on the cogen side, and the cogen's far more involved, in my opinion, than this project. So I think you're probably still comfortable with that $20,000, even if you don't have assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The next item for the committee is on page 9. This is a request to authorize payment to 2 contractors that we've used in the temporary court space downstairs. As you know, we've been advancing the renovations of the former law library under a very tight timeline. We initiated work end of September with a demolition contract, and then followed up quickly with HVAC, plumbing and electrical contractors. We used contractors that had already been bid out for services earlier in 2015 under term contracts. We have existing bids and existing contracts that we utilized to get the work underway as quickly as possible to try and meet this January 2016 deadline. At some point during the work, Julie Butler informed me that The project should have been bid as a standalone project because it exceeded a threshold, a dollar amount threshold in our purchasing policy. So we ceased work with those contractors. The two contractors in question are Roselle East and BPI Mechanical. The DPW engineers, along with Clark Patterson, quickly did some design work and developed an RFP package to put out. Took us a few weeks of a halt in the progress of the project. We got that out and we awarded a fresh contract to the same two contractors the first week of December. So what we needed to do, though, however, was some of the work that was done under the original contracts need a board authorization to be able to pay the portion of the work that they did under those initial contracts. There's other bills that will be paid out of the new contract that was bid specific to the project. Again, it's the same contractors under both. This was procedurally, though, we should have waited and not rushed to getting work done. We should have taken the 3 weeks or 4 weeks in the beginning. But I'm happy to say the project is well underway, and I hope everybody gets a chance. The crews are down there virtually every day, and lots of weekend time too. If anyone wants to see it, I'll offer again. I know a lot of supervisors have come through the space. So essentially, this is part of the work that went into the project, and I need a board authorization to pay these
And the
bills.
two amounts here, could you clarify to the BPI Mechanical Service, amount of $44,577.91?
Yes,
And Roselle's, is that on the next?
that's the next page, yes, $11,429.
Okay, any questions before we get it on the floor? Craig?
Mr. Tennyson, these were from a bid anyway.
Yes.
So it's just the accounting of it, make sure it goes through the proper bid processes and whatnot, but the work that was done through a
We had it
bid
through an
process
existing bid and an existing contract that was in effect, so.
Okay.
I'll move that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and a second, please. Second by Claudia. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, the next item, I was gonna have Frank give an update on the temporary court space renovations.
Thank you. The temporary court room itself is pretty much completed. We're waiting on doors, and we still have to do a few, roof penetrations, one for fresh air intake for the HVAC and one for a bathroom vent. But the courtroom is pretty much completed. All of the other rooms, I believe the ceiling grid is in all of them. So we're there, but we've got a little bit left. Carpet will be the last thing we do as we clean up. After this meeting, Supervisor Montesi has asked that I bring him down and show him, do a walkthrough, so anyone else that would like to join us, you're more than welcome. Or anytime, just give me a call and I'd be happy to bring anybody through. I don't know if anyone has questions. And then if you jump down to the third item, municipal center security, all the fobs on the outside doors are now activated and working. My plan is to wait a couple of weeks to make sure we have all the bugs worked out of the system, to make sure everyone gets their fobs activated and working. And then I'm gonna change all of the outside locks on the building. When I do that, then we're on the fob system, so, I expect a few problems there, but it's been a pretty smooth transition for the most part. As soon as the weather permits, we're gonna change those front signs, take the temporary ones down, put some bigger signs up, but keep them pretty simple as far as pointing people in the right direction so we don't have a traffic jam at the front entrance. But that'll be coming up. So,
Yeah.
again, if anyone has questions, that's about all I have for the update.
I just have a couple things to add on the municipal center security. It has been going very smooth and we've gotten virtually no complaints. So appreciate everybody, being on board with that. And we're happy that, the public seems to be, working through it fine, and, with the exception of a couple people, you know, forgetting their fobs or not requesting fobs. It's been very effective, and the employees, virtually no complaints from everyone. And then also back on the temporary court renovations, we are, you'll see if you come down and walk through, there's a few components in the court area itself that are missing, namely some customized doors. But we have been in close communication with the family court staff to ensure that if they get in a pinch and they need to operate out of that courtroom, we can make it happen for them. Right now, we're leaving the doors off because we're waiting on those custom doors. If we had to install some doors in the interim, we could do that. But they're being patient and working with their schedule. We're just communicating on a regular basis to see when their actual must-occupy date is and making sure that we meet that. So we're kind of in that state right now, but everything's going well so far.
Do the dedication.
Okay, yes, the next item before we get back into Clark Patterson talking about our bigger project, I have on the agenda for discussion the potential of dedicating the family court wing to Judge Breen. So I talked with Chairman Gerard this morning about it, and I know we've made contact with a lot of the court staff, but I wanted to put that on the agenda for discussion and see what the committee's will is.
I'd like to hear from the court staff, someone could speak to it, and,
Let me speak to that issue. It's certainly a noble thought. Judge Breen is certainly somebody that we all had great affection for. I certainly would be in favor of that, but I think I'd like to have the opportunity to share that with my brothers and sister judges. I'd like to be able to share that with the Bar Association too, but it's a noble cause, no question about it. He deserves that and more, quite frankly. Thank you for making it an issue.
okay. And, would you like to report back to us, Judge, on that? And then maybe could you attend next meeting and,
Do my best to do that, but what is it precisely that we're talking about? All of the new construction that has yet to occur, correct?
Jeff?
The concept would be that, yes, the new addition on the north end of the building, in the end is gonna be virtually solely family court, the two new family courts.
Yes.
So I talked a little bit with Matt Smullen from Clark Patterson about how that would be incorporated into their design, and that would be our desire, would be to have a resolution passed now or soon, so that the final design going into construction for the spring has incorporated possibly some lettering on the side of the building, and also some lettering, perhaps we saw some walls, interior walls in the main waiting area for a family court that would indicate, you know, where the two court entrances actually are. We could do some lettering in there, but essentially it would be a proclamation or a resolution of the board, and then we would incorporate a phrase dedicating it, and possibly a plaque or something like that on the new construction. That's essentially what we were anticipating.
Well, somewhere there'll be some notable recognition, and it's up in the air from what I just heard as to precisely where, or maybe even the form of it, right?
Yes, and this really just came up this morning,
Right.
and but what I can certainly do is ask Clark Patterson to work on, from an architectural standpoint, where those letterings may go, and do a concept, and maybe I can get that to you, so then when you talk to your fellow judges and the Bar Association, you have something in concept.
All right, I'll do it rapidly. That's,
Thank you, Judge.
you know, I mean, it's certainly right on the heels of while we're all mourning, and his family is mourning. But it's not lost on me, the significance, it's not lost on anybody in the courtroom, the significance of what you're suggesting here, particularly to us, and what he gave to this. And he was in many of these meetings, and doing his very best to get his fingerprints all over it, and he did. And we should give him his final fingerprint. I'll get back to you quickly.
Yeah, and there was, Judge, we put it, probably sooner than later on the agenda today, because Jeff had been approached by court staff, et cetera, thinking it was a good idea. He texted me this morning about it, and I asked him to pursue the court's input on it, so that, you know, the committee could discuss and, you know, the significance of it, et cetera. And, just personally, Judge Breen, this court expansion has been brought up, a litany of years ago, where we put it on the back burners when we ran into some economic, tough times. He gave several tours through the facility and explained in detail what goes on down there and the expansion thereof and what he's up against and the square footage, and what was going on, whether it be safety-wise, family-wise, et cetera. And I think it was one of the most impactful things that I have seen outside of maybe the youth center director, Matt Condon coming before the common council at one time, and I found out what he was doing. And I had the privilege of doing that twice, and how hard and he fought for this, and then of course, you know, having it come to fruition here, and unfortunately him not seeing it. I thought it was very extremely appropriate. The man's dedicated his life pretty much to the family court business, and done a fabulous job and is highly respected. So I thought this was one of the least things we could do, and I don't know if the committee, if anyone takes offense to it, but now would be the time to discuss it or add or subtract to it. Everybody good with it? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Smullen from Clark Patterson. And, you want? Yeah. Okay, I want you to introduce the team.
You want to make,
I don't know if they have handouts.
I think you want to make absolutely sure that we have the products from the engineers, address the legal questions relative to the contract. And that's going to take somebody looking at the contract, telling the engineers, looking at the work program, the engineers say, okay, these are the products I'm going to need, be able to make that analysis. Folks, who don't do their thing, they know how to do their thing. Although I'd give them a shot at the work program just because they're there.
Right.
Get to a certain point in time, and it's going to go.
Yeah.
Just while they're getting ready, Clark Patterson's team that they put together and what they've done to date is collectively, it's a lot of legwork and meeting with a lot of principals and disciplines to assemble what their needs are so they could go to design stage. There's what we call a core team who are our employees that, you know, whether it be electricians, HVAC, and our engineers, and of course Frank and Jeff and myself have been in these meetings, why the other disciplines have brought in, whether they be security people from the courts themselves, and then each person that Clark Patterson employs, their architects and designers, etc. So this is a culmination, I hope, that gives some clarity to where they've been, what they're doing, how they're proceeding, and answer any questions that you have. And this is Matt Smullen, who'll be starting off the presentation and introducing his people. And thank you very much, Matt. Take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for the introduction. And I know you guys have had a long morning already, so we'll try and keep it brief enough that we keep it moving, but give enough detail that everybody understands what's happening and where we're headed. Also allow for question and answers both at the end, and if anything comes up that's worth talking about while we're talking about this, feel free to chime in, ask questions along the way. So let me go ahead and introduce the team. Many of you know me, Matt Smullen, and most of you know John Norris, our project manager, and the rest of the team that's here handles the other disciplines. We've got Dave Hart, handles our mechanical designs, Tony Marchetti on the electrical side, Jennifer Wengender is plumbing and fire protection, and then interior design is Susan Clark, and then Maria Mazurik is the project architect who works closely with John on the project. We'll go through a little bit of brief overview of the budget, and then we'll go through site, some of the MEP design topics, talk a little bit about what correspondence we've had with agency reviews, and we'll look at a proposed schedule. And again, like I said, then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So let me figure out how we move forward on this. We got some. Okay. briefly on the budget, we talked about at the beginning of this project, looking at the full build-out being, we were at, on conceptual stage, about $16.2 million. The board decided to bond $16.5 million. So of the $16.5 million that, was agreed to be bonded, $9.5 was gonna be the phase 1 and 2 construction cost estimate, and phase 1 and 2 being the new family court addition, and then the renovation of the existing family court space. Future phases would be the, renovation of the existing court spaces. So that's the $3.8 million budget for those phases. $2.9 million in, soft costs, owner soft costs, and, that left about $300,000 for a bond contingency, we call it a bond contingency. To date, we've worked with a construction manager to hone in on the cost for phases 1 and 2, and we've looked at some ways to keep those costs in check. Those are listed below, and we can get into some more details on those later, but the long story short is the $9.5 million is still a good target, that we're comfortable with that being the budget number for the phases 1 and 2. Get into the site work a little bit. Now this doesn't want to work. Site plan, I think everybody knows that the proposed addition is going to go to the north of the existing municipal center. Of course, that'll take up what is now I'm going to use the pointer here because then everybody can see whatever's on whichever screen you're looking at. So obviously there's the existing parking lot here that'll be occupied by the new building. Site utility is really not all that complicated. The only thing that has to get moved is the water service. The current water service goes right about here, which would be right through the proposed building. We're going to go around the proposed building, obviously. And then the perimeter road is going to move to the north. It's going to be about 10 to 15 feet that'll get moved to the north. This existing parking area will get reconfigured and expanded a little bit to add some parking. And then the new main entrance, which is now, the court entrance is now on the north side of the building. The new main entrance here will be on the west side of the building, and that'll handle court security for the entire court complex. We're showing here the full build-out. This parking area over here that's now smaller and configured differently would be reconstructed, added. It would add parking for the entire municipal center complex. We're not proposing to do that in phases 1 and 2. We wanted to show it to you now, but that would be future, probably after phases 3, 4, and 5. Two reasons for that. One is this area will probably be used for a contractor staging area during construction. And then the other reason is this could potentially be some work that the DPW does. It could be done in-house, realize some additional cost savings if that's the case. So we'll look at that as the project moves forward down the road. So next up, we're going to get
Matt, Jeff just said.
Just one comment on this. I think I've talked to committee already about the concept of adding a park and ride lot outside the ring road, which would go to the west side of that ring, the extreme left side of the, yes, right in that area. So part of our concern is for construction phase having the contractor staging, because portions of these parking lots, as we're showing the final build-out, are going to be used for construction staging of equipment and materials. So I'll likely be back to committee with a more detailed plan on that park and ride lot that will be between our existing ring road and Route 9, and that'll free up, another 20 spaces or so and give us that additional flexibility during the construction phase. And then I think it makes sense long-term anyway to have that lot separated from the court lot.
Yeah, and we'll work with you and DPW on that, Jeff, to pull that into the design, and then we'll talk about the staging of the different site construction.
Just off, how many additional, I like the way you added the additional parking. That was an issue that was brought up. How many, what is the loss of parking in numbers and how much we're gaining back with the design modification? Do you know?
I don't have the numbers on it, but we are going to look at that as far as there's a lot of reconfiguring now with the access now through Human Services in the front of the building, and then we're expecting, or at least I would expect that some of the folks who might be parking in this lot now are going to move down to the south end of the building for their parking. So I was going to get with Jeff and talk about what are we seeing now that now that the building has been reconfigured, and then what do we think our, you know, our net gain in parking spaces needs to be out in the front of the building? Because we certainly wanna make sure, and then the other thing that we might wanna look at is the parking lot that's just to the south of this, proposed parking lot that's now designated as employee only, if potentially that would wanna become an overflow for court parking and then employee only goes elsewhere, it's something to keep as an option, I would think.
I think we're gonna end up with quite an increase in parking, even though we're losing that entire, north lot where the building is going. On the upper right-hand corner there, the northeast lot is virtually unused at this point. There's, and it's really not configured in a manner that is conducive to a lot of parking going on that side of the building. We have a lot of equipment stored out there. There's a large section in that upper corner that isn't even paved right now. It's a lawn area with, the compaction dumpsters and other things that obviously will have to be relocated. But I think overall, we'll end up with more parking than we have now, even though we're losing that entire, northern lot.
Yeah, that's right, there will be a net gain in parking when it's all said and done, for sure. Floor plan, looks like we had some formatting issues of moving it from our computer to this computer, so this is the floor plan.
As Mark and Jeff already mentioned, we are showing here phase 1 and phase 2 of the work. Phase 1 is the addition that will house 2 family courtrooms and a hearing room. And phase 2, which is on the right, is the reconfiguration of existing space to provide a larger multi-purpose courtroom that will be sized for Supreme Court and County Court. In the addition, aside from the courtrooms, we obviously have judges' chambers. We have a holding area, we have a juvenile holding area, and a public waiting space, plus all the support spaces, clerk areas, conference rooms, and all the, and also a security office.
Can everyone hear Maria okay?
Yes?
Could you just adjust the mic, Maria, a little bit,
Okay.
maybe?
All right.
Maria, can you just show us with the pointer, like, where the line of the existing building is versus the addition? Because some of this is existing
With
building.
the mouse. This is what you see to the right, this is the existing building. We are only showing a fragment of it. All of this is the addition. That narrow area, the link between the existing building and addition, that will be your new main entrance to the courts. And this also houses a commissioner of jurors, so it will be very easy access to this area. Then to the left, all of this is the main body of the addition. That's your public waiting space. Those are the 2 courtrooms, the hearing room. And in the back, your employee entrance will be from the back. This is the judges' chambers. The other blue area is also judges' chambers. This is the holding area, and that light rectangle there, that is the incarcerated Sally Port. So the access to the Sally Port will be from that back parking area. It will have its own drive, and we have secure entrances to the holding area, and also we will have a secure entrance to the holding area located in the phase 2 in the renovation. So again, by doing the addition, we are displacing your current main public entrance to the courts. So in a moment, we'll show you what's happening with the public entrance. Move on, I guess, right? This is the proposed exterior elevation. This central area, that's your new main entrance to the courts. In use of the materials and general visual language of the new addition, we were trying to tie this new addition, your existing building, and the current human services building, so you will have more of a uniform campus appearance. We are planning on using the brick similar to your existing building. The window language is similar to your large windows, although they certainly come from a different era, different time. This is more contemporary version of it, but we feel that this will complement the newer than your original building, human services building, as well as the original building. Aside from the brick, we plan on using stone-like material, which is not the cast stone in concrete. It's a type of brick also, with some accents in stucco. At the main entrance, we are planning on using your county seal that has been used throughout the campus already. And actually, this wall, which is blank, has been reserved for the building signage. So with your introduction of possibly dedicating the project, we can incorporate that once you pass the resolution and once you know what you are doing, we will incorporate it into the building signage. Yes, sir.
The entrance to the Supreme Court, the existing Supreme Court now, will it be through this?
Yes.
Everything will be.
Once this is
So,
completed.
I mean, that'll be a long walk down the hallway to get to it?
That is correct. However, in the renovation area, now you will have a large courtroom that will be capable of holding Supreme Court or County Court and jury assembly. So your current large courtroom is not the only one where you will be able to have this type of court right now, because currently this wing only houses the family court, which is about approximately 400 square feet. This courtroom that you will gain after the renovation is much larger. So possibly entering through here, you will be able to walk just to this courtroom for certain cases.
And if you wanted to get to the old Supreme Court, you would walk down the hallway to the right?
Right. The same that they do now.
Yeah, we'll be in the one, yeah.
That's correct.
And one thing to keep in mind for those who haven't seen our programming is that all of the public areas, which are in the darker, a little bit darker shade of gray or tan, those are public only, and the incarcerated are now completely separated from the public. So the brown areas are where the secure areas would be for incarcerated. So you've got a separation that we didn't have before. That's a key part of all of the improvements for this project.
That is correct, Ray. Yes. Actually,
Get into the temporary entrance?
let's go into the temporary entrance. So as we mentioned, by doing the addition, we will temporarily block your current entrance or your future entrance to the courts. So we have to provide for the time of construction a different entrance for the public, and we propose that this will be done at the on the south end at the current large entrance bordering the Supreme Court. It will be a temporary structure, but it has to withstand the entire time of construction. Could be, up to 2 years. So it's a real structure, real weatherproofing. We propose that the top landing of those monumental stairs will become an interior space where you will have to set up another security station. Actually, the security station will be set up in the current lobby in front of the Supreme Court, and that new temporary addition will be able to house queuing and public entrance. I guess that's about it, unless, and we can come back to questions about specifics of the new construction there. Yes? Good? Okay, let's move on to interior design then.
Okay, interior design of this facility took its direction from a couple different ways. We were given the comments in the beginning that the new or fairly new Human Services building, the interior design was well received there. So we kind of took that as a springboard in terms of some of the colors and the way that materials were used. We also looked at creating spaces that would be more timeless and traditional, so nothing too trendy. Looking at cherry wood tones, warm color schemes, and using some stone accent at your front door, your main lobby, to create that wow entrance. Materials are durable, easy to maintain, and timeless. We're looking at terrazzo flooring in the highly trafficked public areas. Carpet, if you look up at the plan here, the tan color represents the carpet. This light gray color that I'm pointing to is kind of your main lobby and public corridor. That would be a terrazzo floor, which is kind of the Cadillac of floors, but it's certainly it's chosen more for its durability and ease of maintenance, and not so much, it's beautiful. You have it all over this building right now, but it is a timeless material. Ceramic tile in your toilets and bathrooms, and then this orange in the holding areas would be another poured epoxy type flooring, which is again very easy to maintain. All of the finishes and materials follow the guidelines that the Office of Court Administration has put forth for materials and colors, and New York State Building Code. Let's see, how did you? Yeah. There we go. This is a photo of the finished palette, and I know that there was a small group involved during the selection process. We actually have all of this with us here today in a portfolio. I wasn't sure, given the time of this meeting, whether you wanted to see it, but I can certainly set it up in the back of the room while these guys are talking about mechanics and electrics, if you wanted to see it. But we do have all the materials. This is what was chosen during the selection process. This is what was priced, so this all currently is in the budget. And it's all very appropriate. Nothing is over the top, nothing is too opulent. It's all, like I mentioned, easy to maintain, timeless colors. I talked about the floors. The walls are pretty much paint throughout, with the exception of the bathrooms have ceramic wall tile, but the walls are pretty much paint, and we do have some wood wainscoting in all the courtrooms, and wood trim and wood base in the judges' chambers. So those get kind of bumped up a little bit in terms of the aesthetics. A slide that we put together just on the courtroom design in general, because that is kind of the meat of the addition is the new courtrooms. Kind of this picture down on the right here is your existing Supreme Court room, and looking at the use of wood and the marble accent behind the judge was a theme that we continued in the new courtroom. So looking at this elevation here, this represents what the new courtrooms would look like behind the judge. So again, the use of a nice dark cherry wood with some marble accents. We put a picture of your temporary courtroom. You got off the news. And that, for those who have seen it or who will see it, will give you kind of a flavor of what the new color scheme will look like throughout. Anything else? Any questions on the courtroom design or interior design?
Okay, I'm going to talk about the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system we have proposed for the project. The industry term for this type of system is a variable air volume system, which consists of one large central air handling unit that will be located on the roof of the addition, and which will be on the roof of this portion of the addition. From there, it's ducted supply air distribution to a series of variable air volume terminal boxes, which will control and regulate the flow of airflow and the temperature within not within each individual space, but groups of spaces typically. And it's broken up into about 35 to 40 thermal zones within the addition, including the renovation of the existing family court area here. Benefits of this type of system: it is very efficient. It's a good match for part load conditions when the ambient conditions aren't super cold or super hot. It turns the fan speed down, it turns the pump speeds down that control the flow of heating hot water to the unit and to the VAV boxes themselves. There is energy recovery included in the rooftop unit. The return air that is brought back to the unit and either exhausted or returned goes through an energy recovery wheel that recaptures some of the heat that goes back into the supply air distribution and preheats the outside air required for code ventilation requirements. As you see, the return is also a completely ducted system. It looks pretty crowded here, and it is fairly crowded. All of this will be above the ceiling of the new addition. So obviously all the ductwork, all the mechanicals are concealed up there. It's ducted for several reasons. One, it benefits the system efficiency. But one thing I've noted down here under system benefits, noise control and privacy within offices. You don't have a plenum above the ceiling where noise can transfer. The way we're designing the ductwork, the return ducts will
have elbows and turns in them to prevent sound transmission from one office to another to accentuate the privacy between areas. Comfort's a big benefit of this type of system. The zones, again, are controlled to their own individual temperature set point requirements, so there's variability there. It's a high quality system. You have one large central piece of equipment for filter changeouts, compressors, and the such. You don't have what you have in this current building, which is a series of terminal heat pump units that require continuous maintenance, ongoing maintenance. The maintenance required for the variable air volume boxes, and I'm kind of circling one right here, is very minimal. There's a control damper with an actuator on it, and then a control valve that regulates the water flow into the hot water coil. Very minimal maintenance required on those pieces of equipment. The longevity of a system of this type is easily 30 to 35 years. It is the highest useful life of any system that we would consider for this type of a project. And again, the heating potential is generated by high efficiency condensing boilers, which will be located in a mechanical room right over here. There's 2 boilers with a couple hot water distribution pumps. Again, those are very high efficiency units. They will operate at 90+% efficiency. And the pumps also have motors that can turn down if the heating load is not needed within the building. So again, another energy savings measure we're proposing. And that's all I have on the mechanical system. Oh, one thing for the family court area. This area now is served by a series of heat pumps. We are removing them and taking them off of your existing system and then providing an air distribution system that's an extension of the new system for the addition to serve this space. So I think it'll take some load off your existing system and equipment, allow that to operate a little better, and then serve the renovated space with a new system for the addition.
Okay, I'm going to discuss some of the main topics, the electrical system associated with the project. Power distribution, we'll be feeding the new addition from the existing basement main electrical room. What we're proposing is a new 800 amp service to feed this building from your existing gear. New main distribution panel board will be placed in the main mechanical electrical room, and it'll serve, at this point we have 5 new branch panels that'll be placed within the new addition, as well as some replacement panels that we'll be replacing in the existing building. Right now the existing building is on full emergency power. With the addition, the existing generator is not large enough to carry the existing building plus a new addition. So what our plan is at this point is to replace the 400 kW generator with a new 750 kW diesel generator at the same location. We'd still be utilizing the existing transfer switch in the main electrical room and switchboard, so none of that equipment will change. The existing lighting system that we're proposing will be all LED. Lighting controls throughout will consist of ceiling and wall mounted occupancy and vacancy sensors. The new lighting system will consist primarily in general spaces of 2x2 and 2x4 recessed troffers. They're a volumetric or direct-indirect style fixture. And some of our more specialty lighting you'll see in the courtrooms, where we'll get into LED pendant hung globes, down lighting, and some cove lighting. The fire alarm system, obviously the new addition and renovated spaces will consist of full initiation and notification devices that will be connected to your existing Simplex 4100 ES system. Along with the fire alarm, to keep up with new New York State code, will be the placement of carbon monoxide detectors throughout where needed. Voice data and sound systems for the project. We coordinated this very closely throughout with the New York State Judicial District with Joanne Mann, Dustin Schwartz, and Judge Mueller. We have drop locations already established throughout that we've reviewed a number of times. And access control and, intercom, as well as CCTV. We've coordinated that closely as well with the local courts and security systems, or departments, so. I think that's about it electrically, unless there's any questions.
Just, I have one.
Yep.
Just for our building department, are you happy that these systems, HVAC systems, will mesh well with our existing, building staff, in terms of what we need to do on a day-to-day basis? You've been through this and meets with your support and approval? I mean, some of these systems, I assume are gonna have to be, managed contractually, in terms of balancing and that kind of thing. The boilers, for example, that kind of thing, but in terms of things that we do, in terms of the management of this building, are you satisfied with?
What I would anticipate is on some of the new systems, we might include in the bid, training session for the routine maintenance. I think we did that on Human Services on some of the new systems over there. So we do a similar thing here, but Clark Patterson's team has been, we've met numerous times with not only Frank, but our actual technicians on Frank's staff. And, part of the concerns that have been addressed and the types of equipment that they're speccing are going to some of the concerns of our staff, so, they've been fully engaged and on board with the new types of systems that are coming in, and any specialized training that we need at our, for our routine maintenance, we would handle through the bid.
So that, the support would be, that would be as seamless as possible, that handoff would be as, so you've accommodated that?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, your mechanical and electrical staff, they're fully up to speed with what our basis of design is gonna be for these different systems. They're in full agreement with it, so.
Morning. The most interesting topic of the day, I'm sure. Domestic water and gas connections for the new addition are gonna come from the existing, services into the center of the building, in the basement. We've got a path, through the basement and then through, the existing crawl space to get into our new addition for domestic water and gas. The gas will serve the new boilers and, some new domestic water heaters. We're gonna keep the domestic water loop separate for the new addition to make sure that you've got quick hot water to all of your fixtures. Matt already mentioned the water service needs to move. It's approximately, right here under the footprint of the new addition. So it works out well for us actually because we needed to add an additional hydrant, based on the size of the building. And also because of the assembly, occupancy, and new construction codes, we're required to have full sprinkler system of, our renovated spaces. So when we move the, water service around the building, we're gonna add a fire hydrant and also bring in a new water service into, the same mechanical room where the boilers are going to be. So we will have a fire riser in that building which will serve, the new addition. It will serve everything that we touch in each of the phases of the project. And everything will be sized with, a capped main at the end of the project zone so that, in the future, if you wanna add sprinkler coverage to the rest of the building, you can easily extend that system. Sanitary, for the entire government center building, leaves just outside the footprint of our new addition. We need to tie into it for the new addition, but it's not really within the footprint that it needs to move. However, we've been told, the age and condition of that main, it is very deep. If we have the opportunity during this project with all of the excavation, we are currently planning to replace that line from where it exits the building to just past the footprint of our new building. It's something that needs to get looked at during, construction. It's probably about 20 foot deep. So that's part of the plan and will be looked at during construction. Fixtures, most fixtures will be, typical, what you see in public places, but we will have, penal fixtures in holding and detention areas, all approved by, the, people looking at the court approvals. We're using water conserving fixtures as applicable, with county and municipal projects. You know, we try to follow green practices, but, you know, also be, you know, efficient. One other little thing to note, and we have an emergency shower. You've got your new main entrance, and, you know, just looking at, potential hazards at this location. Within the staff locker room, just adjacent to this, we have an emergency shower, so if there is an incident, within that, entry, we have a place where staff and, public could receive emergency attention or, cleaning. I think those are all the big ticket plumbing issues.
The agency what's that? The agency reviews, suffice to say, I mean, John's been in a lot of coordination with a lot of different folks. He's certainly prepared to talk about, you know, different parts of the reviews that we've been through. I don't know if in the interest of time, if there's specific questions, but in addition, of course, we've had some local turnover here. And Judge Mueller has agreed to step in and be one of the local contacts that we'll be dealing with here with local courts. So, if there are any questions on that, or if there's something in particular that John would like to cover, we can do that, or you know, we can then, or just turn it over to you know, our Q&A. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, Matt, in one of our meetings that we had, there was concerns brought up with the type of windows, the doors, and it was mostly on a monetary consideration. And I just need you to speak to that as far as when you go to design, if they're appropriate as far as a medium price, or they're expensive, or how you derive at your design and what we're actually getting. Because that was a legitimate question. I just assumed that we were getting what was generic to the industry, and but I, you know, certainly I couldn't answer it. But it was a good question, and also the doors. There was compared to the Human Service Building, there was some issues with types of doors or whatever, and they wanted to know about that. So if you could address that, how you went about that.
Yeah, I can speak generically about it, and then I'll let the team, if anybody else has anything that I miss. One of the things, you know, like Dave said, you're looking at something on the mechanical side that you're looking to last in the 30 to 35 year time frame. And similar to, say, the Terrazzo, where you're looking at something in a high traffic area that's going to withstand the test of time. I mean, you're building something that's a municipal facility. It's going to be high traffic. You want it to last. You don't want to be replacing things. And at the same time, you don't want to spend excess money for the sake of just an aesthetic treatment or something that is going to be something that's not necessary. So, you know, a lot of the work that we do a lot of schools, hospitals, and municipal work. So we're doing those types of specifications for areas where we're looking for, you know, something that's going to last, something that Frank's folks aren't here trying to repair every couple of weeks. And you're right, we did have one door, I think it was on the rear of the Human Services Building, that we ended up with something that was an issue during installation. Became a little tricky to get that door to line up the right way. So I think it's, long story short, I think it's they're cost-effective choices that we're looking for that are gonna withstand the test of time here. Is there anything to add on that?
And I just want to add that, hi Dan, that, well, our new court facility, the addition, it's a very different function than the Human Services Building, and we do have a certain prescribed level of materials and, for instance, doors that come not necessarily just out of our, you know, even experience, but for instance, Office of Court Administration actually issues design guidelines that we need to follow in respect to court design. So in our new addition, since we have holding areas and we have the court facilities, in the bulk of the building, even the courtrooms, all the offices, we have very normal, like Matt described, good quality doors. There are requirements as to the acoustics with respect to courts and judges' offices and law clerks' offices. So, for instance, some of our doors have to be sound doors, which are typically more expensive than a regular door. But this is the guideline that we need to follow in this particular, for the building of this particular function. So everywhere where we can, we are using very standard materials that are just able to withstand the time, but other than that, we are not looking for anything unnecessarily fancy. Where we have to use a specialty product because it's, again, ruled by the guidelines or simply dictated by the function, we do. We will have detention type doors in the detention areas. In the areas abutting the detention, which will be like, for instance, the corridors that will have incarcerated movement, we will use heavy-duty commercial type doors that are a step beyond your wood doors that you have in the office areas. But again, we will go to those special materials only where it's necessary.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Ron?
The carport area, is that a structure? Is it a screened-in area?
That's a fence. That's a special type of fence with a roof, not a solid roof, but also fence type roof.
I
Yes,
see.
netting.
And so there'll be automatic gates going in?
That's correct.
They're locked behind the vehicles for security purposes?
That's correct.
And then the space between that area and the building proper, there's a space there of
a courtyard, let's say, let's call it, right, yes.
What are your thoughts on that? Is that just going to be open space? I mean, is it usable? Is it?
This space might be accessed by the employees. Also, we have some emergency exits that will be emptying to this space. Therefore, also within the area right next to the sally port, we will have some swinging gates that will have egress hardware and will allow for the egress from those areas. But other than that, they are not meant to be used. The narrow courtyard between the existing building and the new addition, that actually was created for exterior fire separation according to the code. So we just end up with that space. But again, it allows us at the same time emergency exits from the building. So altogether, it's a design that ties together.
Anyone else? Okay. Marion, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And is there any, as far as moving forward, is there any other updates that you want to come to the committee with in the coming months, or timetables you'd like to talk about, or?
I know our next, we're going to have sort of a workshop meeting with local courts and DPW on February 11th, and we're going to walk through the construction drawings to, give a more detailed overview of each discipline. We've allocated essentially the full day, about an hour for each discipline, including interiors, including security. So I think what we'll do is if we identify, I know DPW will be involved in that meeting, and if we identify things that we think are decision points that we can look at bringing, or if there are updates that come out of that, we can certainly bring those back to committee. Either Jeff can bring them back, or we can come back. So that'll be. I did have a slide on schedule, but that was sort of everything's based off of that. We go from the February 11th meeting and continue from there to look to get out to potentially a bid package in the spring, and move forward from there. A construction that would go, from there, like 1.5 to 2 year time frame for the first 2 years.
Jim?
Yeah, quick question. How well lit are the parking lots for people that stay late at night? Are they lit, or are they?
Yeah, they'll be lit. We're actually providing LED site lighting that's gonna match the same look as what you have in the AHS, or the Human Services building. That'll be building mounted fixtures as well as pole mounted LED site lights.
Okay. If we have anything else come before the committee?
Chairman, would you like me to put up the schedule slide, or would you, are you comfortable with
I think if
what
it's
we-
predicated on February 11th, there's no need, because we keep abreast at the full board meeting.
Sure.
You know, with the information that Jeff brings, and I think we can address that as we move forward.
Okay.
And then naturally, if you have questions or critical things that you need addressed, we certainly will do that in a timely manner, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
everything, and thank you for everyone for attending. Okay, motion to adjourn? By Evelyn, seconded by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Craig?
No, it's not. Take this one. How you doing, Jeff? Doing fine, thanks.
I wanna talk to you about